it's always been an issue for folks who've got some sort of web-based business at home, or some graphics designer who's up trying to upload either high quality images or videos. um, it would just take forever, right? And sometimes the connection would drop and then you'd have to start over again. um, so but why it's important is because you can go back just a year, almost 2 years ago, where the incumbent providers lobbied the FCC to allow them to still build out, receive subsidy money to build out networks that would supply consumers with a 10-1 connection. And the problem with that, and now 25.3, that's been in place for a while, is that it's not future proof whatsoever. We're all, the federal government's always behind this because of the power, lobbying power of incumbent providers. Um, because it means that they can get money to keep their networks active, but they're not doing anything to really provide a meaningful and sustainable service to their own consumers. There are still people today who are on DSL. Why? I have no idea. Nobody should be on DSL today. But yet we still have them. And those folks are dealing with, if they're lucky, 4 down and less than 1 up. And what can you do with that? And again, as technology continues to evolve at the rapid pace in which it does, then what I said earlier is going to have a lot more meaning to it. There's and by the way, the other reason why the broadband definition is meaningful is because um, money, federal funds are based on the broadband map, which um, requires incumbent providers to provide yearly information about what they're actually providing, although what they typically provide is advertised speeds. So if we're going to give taxpayer money to, tell internet service providers to build networks, we should be building networks today that where feasible should just be fiber. It's nuts that we're still. This conversation's been going on for 2009, so
Yeah.
we're and probably before that, but at a very high level, it's been going on for 12 years, and we never learn from our own history. So
I noticed that getting Wi-Fi. I just want to wait. First, I want to welcome Alan to the room. So
Thank
welcome.
you. I was busy today, so I just can't just stop to say hi. It's been a busy day for me, so my apologies for.
It's okay. Brittany had a late meeting. It started at a half hour before this call, so we already knew that was going to go past whatever the time was.
But I'm on now, and we're live. So those of you who are out there in live stream land, we are on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. We do have one person watching, so I would love to hand it back to you, Marcus, to kind of reset the room, since we have a couple of people joining us here a little bit later, and share what we've been talking about. That'd be great.
Jeffrey was educating me on basically the reality of what's going on around. I asked the question pretty early, which was he was okay. Let me get this right, Jeffrey. I'm gonna practice this. You were able to establish the first Wi-Fi 6 router, correct? In use?
Yes, not me personally, but the company I work for, yes.
Yes. But from that, there's a lot of lessons learned.
Correct.
Yes, and now the question I asked around that was working on work using a Wi-Fi 6 router that I currently own. There's a lot of devices that don't even take full advantage of it. And we were talking about the future reality of as technology becomes more and more immersive, what would be some of the needs and some of the requirements that we would need in order for this to happen. One of the biggest things that we came up that I learned from the conversation was our broadband requirements are only for 25 down, 3 up, which is extremely slow. And then I brought in my own personal thing where I personally want better connectivity, but at the same time, I'm afraid to do all the things that should be required in order to do that. I went out and bought a Wi-Fi 6 router, but I didn't change the cabling in my house. How many people want to go into their basement or if they have an existing home and rewire everything? We just Jeffrey helped me understand and explain that for most of us, when we go over to different locations or different houses or even businesses, the quick thing that we ask someone if we have a smart device is, how do I access the internet? And we are trained to be used to using Wi-Fi. So through that, we had a myriad of conversations and some of the challenges going forward with that.
Yeah, that's really really interesting. I think I was just recounting with you the other day, Marcus. The a soda pop wherever you're from machine that we've installed back when I was a consultant. We primarily relied on cellular internet. So and instead of saying it a specific brand, it could be like your Verizon or AT&T. They had a specific service provider that they contracted with, and they only used internet services with, so that it would ping the refilling site, right, to let them know, hey, this particular soda needs to be refilled. They completely bypass the whole idea of needing to connect to Wi-Fi, um, because to your point, there's so many things that would need to be updated, upgraded. The cabling would have to be repulled in a business in order for that particular IoT technology. People don't think about a soda machine as IoT, but it's IoT to actually be able to work functionally the way it was designed to. And yeah, there's lots of challenges with that. And that's just one business perspective, much less someone who owns a home and is just trying to maximize the use of their internet for something as simple as education, as an example. So really really interesting stuff. um that always gets me that they connect to a particular service provider. um Whatever the case might be, I would love to hear different thoughts here from the audience, as well as Alan, um on this topic.
So my question is, let's go the same line as Brittany and Marcus is an end user. Why would I even bother to upgrade? That's Jeffrey. Maybe he can.
For for an end user on my side
No,
or
I think it means end users in general.
okay.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting question. If I were a marketer, I'd tell you because you want to use the latest and greatest technology. But you weren't on the call when I was discussing this earlier, and hopefully this provides some perspective. But the challenge isn't just using the latest and greatest, because quite frankly, you might have other impediments in your home, like the way the home's constructed, for example, or if you live in an MDU building, then you've got interference from potentially your neighbors. Um, and quite frankly, you could have older devices that can't make use of the technology anyways. And this is the problem that router manufacturers, quite frankly, don't consider, is the fact that most people don't have devices that have the necessary hardware inside them to use Wi-Fi 6, 6E, or 7. So the answer to your question is if you know your own devices in your home very well that you're using, like your laptop, computer, iPad, whatever. If they can't support that technology, then you can't take advantage of it. And so the industry as a whole needs to do a better job of educating people on that, because it's really, in this case, about setting the right kind of expectations for folks. Because a consumer might buy the latest and greatest technology, but can't take advantage of it because they're using outdated devices. But they don't know that. Same thing with if you were to get a gigabit connection into your home, say fiber to your home, and your router can provide you the ability to connect at, say, 900 plus megabits per second in both directions. But if you've got a 4-year-old computer, a 5-year-old computer with a 100 meg network card in it, doesn't matter what you do. You could sit on top of the router. You could plug into the router from the computer, and you would still only see 100 by 100, right? Because the network card is out of date.
Right.
It's not up to date. So
this is exactly my point. So let me illustrate it even some more. So I live in a high rise, as I think probably Brittany and Marcus already know, and I connect. I'm sitting now when I just ran a speed test, and I have 400 up and 440 down and 390 up. Okay, which is way more than most people need. That's on my Wi-Fi. If I connect directly to my router, I'll get probably 700 because that's what I'm getting in. And actually, they managed to run it on old Cat3 cables, which is shocking to me, but they managed to do it somehow. So they took my old phone lines that nobody uses anymore, my landline, and run it from the closet hallway where they put the router, and use my Cat3 to give me that much speed, and it's been pretty reliable. So again, that even more so illustrate why would I care for more if I can't even use it as a consumer. How much bandwidth do?
Well, I mean, that's a good point, and one that's been made by wireless internet service providers for a long time. Why do we need to keep talking about a gigabit? And as someone who facilitates a broadband conference, I would say that the industry itself has set the wrong expectation because it's not in line with realities. You are correct when you say that we don't need a gigabit today. I have fiber coming to my home as well, by the way. And do I use all the capacity that's coming in my house? Absolutely not. But it's not. My house isn't wired, so I'm doing everything wirelessly. But here's the thing. Here's what I do know, and here's what sort of makes me feel good about where I'm at today. That I know technology is going to evolve. Technology application is it's going to evolve to a point where you wouldn't ask this question 3 years from now. Someone will be on this. Hopefully, if Clubhouse is still around, someone will say, "Well, how come I don't have fiber to my home where I can use these applications?" Because, as I was saying earlier before you came on, you have to look at aggregate use, aggregate consumption. You can't just look at standalone applications, because that's not how people use technology. So as we see proliferation of extended reality technology, immersive teleconferencing, healthcare diagnostic technology, etc., and combined with IoT, combined with whatever's coming next, if you look at the numbers, now we're talking about a minimum of 700 meg symmetrical connection that has low latency across it in order to support use of those applications in aggregate, which is how we should design and build and deliver broadband services by using that as the primary use case, the aggregate use of all those applications. But we don't do that. We look at standalone applications and say, well, this application only consumes, 25, I'm just making numbers up, 25 megabits per second. That's what's required to use the application. Therefore, um, a 50 meg connection should suffice. Now that argument's okay as long as you don't include any other sort of bandwidth hog applications. I still hear people today talking about using the use case around Netflix. Well, Netflix, if you want to watch 4K, maybe I can't remember, maybe 8 megs per second. But that's not all people are doing in the home at the same time. And God forbid
Yeah.
you throw in cloud gaming.
Right.
I think that you have a point on one, and the other thing I think it's maybe relate to the other rooms that we talked about with this group is you're talking about the people that have and have access and have the need, but the majority of the people in this country don't have access to such high speed. And again, I don't want to take this room to the wrong direction. However, my other point is these technology are coming out now, and as an end user, why would I spend my money on it if I don't need it now? Maybe 5 years from now. Then 5 years from now, I would buy, and then it could be old technology. I can buy it in rock bottom prices rather than buy it as an early adopter. Because as an early adopter, I'm not getting the hardly or any advantage of the new technology except to say to this group, yeah, I have one. And now I'm talking about the end user. Maybe talking about in certain environments, libraries, universities, or these scenarios, maybe extreme heavy users can see it. But for the most part, if my neighbors in the building ask me how much do I need, you don't need at this point. You don't 30 is plenty for what you need, which is the Netflix and the doctor visit online and the other stuff that they do online, because most people, first of all, they care more about the down and not the up, and actually care about up because I generate this stuff. But that, again, different discussion. But as I say, the chances of that we, even in this group, are going to use the full spectrum of gigabyte. We have fiber to our houses. It's pretty slim. I just told you how much I have, and I know I don't. With everything that I have going on here, I don't use even a fraction of that.
No, of course you don't. But again, we shouldn't be looking at it from today's perspective. We should be looking at it for what's coming. And I would argue that I would argue against your argument, right? And my argument against yours is that the industry itself has used your argument to waste subsidy money that comes from taxpayers to keep technologies like DSL alive. You know how many people are still on DSL in this country? There are a boatload of people who are still using old archaic copper technology from AT&T or from Verizon or from. And I'm probably getting some of that wrong, but CenturyLink would be another great example where they've got a bunch of rural markets that they're serving with copper that's been in the ground for forever. And they use your argument to stop the progress on building better network infrastructure to support their customers. And I would also argue that the upload speed became a big issue during the pandemic as more people were forced to work from home and educate from home, etc. It became a big problem.
So Jeff,
So
really,
again, I think.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say really quick, Jeff. It
What's
sounds like to me that what you're wanting to address is the digital divide, where people who are having subpar um capability to access the broadband speeds that are like quote unquote normal, right? You want to make sure that the infrastructure, like you're on a path to share that the infrastructure needs to be built in order to support the people to actually just like get normal internet speeds. Yes, we can progress and continue to push the limit in order to be able to utilize the most up and coming stuff. Yes, sure, that's fine. But there's this group of people who really just need to be like brought up to normal. Am I understanding that correctly?
Brittany, I want to jump in real quick about this. So we touched both sides of the story, and the digital divide was definitely something that was being addressed. But we were also talking about the future side of this, of as more and more demand actually happens. I'll let Jeff respond, but I wanted to say hello to Chris and have Chris introduce.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult situation. Um, it's a difficult problem to solve, right? Because, like I said earlier, if most consumers understood how much money was wasted on telecom subsidies in the past 12 years, they would be astounded, or perhaps some would not be astounded. But if you look at the money the federal government has put into broadband infrastructure versus where we're at today, from people being served, there is really no way of saying what is a normal connection or what is a minimum. Again, I think if you're going to build network infrastructure, we don't half-ass build roads. When we build new roads, we don't like build half the road because right now there's only a small amount of traffic on it. You could use that analogy, and I think it works because if we're going to build this infrastructure, we should build it so that it's future proof. It doesn't matter if you can't consume all the energy that's coming in your house either, probably. So
Yeah,
I
interesting
and then
perspective.
I just wanted to say, why do folks in a city like Detroit, citizens by themselves, have to set up and put together a network so that people can have access to compete in this world of ours with jobs which now require online applications, online interviews, students having to do homework, submit homework, do research. Why do those folks have to figure out a way to raise money to build a network just so they can do the basic things? That's wrong. Anyways, I'll jump off my.
Chris, we'd like
So
to hear from you.
Chris, introduce himself, then I can respond to Jeff.
My name's Chris. I'm with Aptus. We're a home automation company. I kind of got into the middle of everything. I apologize. I was in and out. I was fascinated to find the information for this meeting on LinkedIn and broadcasting and live. So bravo to you to get those two to connect. I've not seen that before. My company is actually trying to get people off of broadband usage. And while we install a lot of smart home devices, we're trying to move people more to a Z-Wave or radio waves, which is something that came up in a previous conversation. And that's something that I believe is going to last, and it has been in existence for a long time. So in regards to broadband, I can't speak to what you guys are talking about right now, but my goal here at Aptus is to get people off of Wi-Fi and broadband and onto a radio wave for their security and home automation. I'm Chris, and I'm.
I mean, I'm going to ask Jeffrey and Alan. Do you guys want to kind of talk about just the low band access? And we can kind of, I know we talked about high speed and high band for a while. Do you want to talk about the low band side of things now?
Sure, I'm not doing anything else.
Booking up.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
I'd be curious to see why this solution proposed by Chris replaces how people use and will use the internet going forward, or will use applications going forward? Like, how does it help someone who's cloud gaming, by the way?
So let me chime in before Chris. So first of all, I don't disagree with you about the infrastructure, Jeff. I think that's the infrastructure, and it's I think it's separate from the end user. Just like you can't, you have to have the highways and the railroad to enable commerce. You have to have the infrastructure to people home, and then maybe they'll use it, maybe not. I think the two are separate. But as an end user, I don't see the need to buy the latest and the greatest because it's plenty as it is. Now, to Chris's point, I live in a high rise, and actually we do have a dish on the roof. That's how we are getting. Some of us in the building are getting our. We have 3 companies that are providing internet to this building. We have Comcast, and we have 2 companies that they put radio, and they broadcasting it from downtown Chicago. And I live in the south, in the tall building in the south side. So that's how we're getting broadband, and they provide the gigabyte to the building. So anybody choose to can have a gigabyte, as I say, and they push very close to it into my unit just by using the Cat 3 lines. So again, I have no reason to ask them to pay for running, Cat 6 or Cat 5 to my unit if what I need is sufficient. Again, it was a lot cheaper than to run fiber on the ground or to lease fiber from AT&T or whomever's owned the fiber in this building. And by putting the dish on our roof, they're providing service to the neighborhood. I'm sure that we're not the only ones who benefiting from the dish. I think that's part of the agreement that we have with them. But I'll let Chris speak more of it because probably he knows way.
Well, I doubt that, but I thank you for that reintroduction. I guess, Jeff, to answer your question, there's some advantages to Z-Wave that Wi-Fi doesn't provide. Longer battery life. If there's an outage, there's cameras that continue to record. You can't call up the internet protocol to get the cameras, but there's information still stored on SD cards. When there's power outages, it remains up and continues to work on battery backup, which is something that Wi-Fi can do as well. But I guess we've just found advantages in remote areas and for people specifically that didn't really want Wi-Fi dependency.
I'm not questioning the viability of the technology, but my question was, how does that technology? Because the way I sort of interpreted your first comment was that you're trying to get people off of broadband, and if that's specifically for the applications that you're providing, I get that. But holistically, getting people off of broadband or Wi-Fi, how does that help them do all the other things that they either enjoy doing through entertainment or will have to do for work as technology improves, or as we see more healthcare diagnostic technology innovation in a home? People who cloud game, people who host cloud-based gaming, people who work from their own a business, work from their home, who design graphics and videos. And for some perspective, I've been off the grid, so to speak, since 2008. So I have been doing everything over the top since then. Of course, you might guess, the first 5 or 6 years, it was next to impossible to figure out a way to enjoy some entertainment because it just wasn't available back in 2010 or 2011 the way it is today, right? So I'm just curious how this technology, if you're trying to get people off of broadband, as you said, how does it help them do the other things other than the applications that you're providing, or the products and services you're providing? How does it help them get completely off of a fiber wireless cable copper connection and use that technology?
It is a codependence. I should rephrase my initial statement. We're not trying to replace Wi-Fi holistically. We're trying to replace it in the areas of the utmost security, and where you need the most dependence is the only replacement. We're partitioning basically routers so that one sector's handling Wi-Fi, the other sector is handling security and entertainment or entertainment.
Right.
No, sorry, I got that wrong. So, no, I'm not trying to eliminate Wi-Fi or broadband usage at all. I'm a big fan of fiber optic and building for the future, like you said before.
Yep.
But
No. Thanks for clarifying that. I obviously misunderstood what you said.
yeah, I misunderstood what you said, Chris, too. But how that is different than just using VLANs on the router, and let's say I can have different VLANs on the same router, and one section is very secure, and it's protocol independent.
Yeah, and that's something that we can provide too. It all depends on the situation. I guess I've not found any extreme advantages to one or the other.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's some other technology that we're not aware of yet that'll come out. There's a company in Albuquerque that actually just that has patented a new technology where they're using radio waves in such a way that they can actually transport, without the use of much power, a really a great deal of capacity over a short distance. It's actually pretty interesting.
Is this
I
LoRaWAN?
Nope. Actually, it's a different technology. And I apologize for not having the details in front of me, but I just met with the founder of the company about a month ago at another event, and I was talking to him about this. It's actually kind of fascinating. So where its use case probably where you see it probably most often used, if they can get some traction, would be like railroad crossings, or any place where getting physical infrastructure across the road or across the railroad tracks is more expensive than people realize it is. And fibers, sometimes building fiber is not cheap. I live in Colorado. Down on the southwest part, there's a pass. It's called Wolf Creek Pass. It's the snowiest place in Colorado. And this pass, CDOT along with some other private companies are building fiber across this pass, and it's $1 million a mile to build it. $1 million a mile. But it'll serve a great purpose when it's finally built, because it'll connect eastern Colorado with the western slope. But so there are cases where going across a railroad crossing or across the river is a daunting expense, and so technologies like the one you're describing, or the one I had mentioned, solve that excessive cost problem.
Just to quickly, what Chris LoRaWAN is a technology that I promised Brittany and Marcus to speak today, but today got busy, so I'll hopefully take a rain check for next week. But briefly, LoRaWAN is good for long distances, but it's very small amount of data for short period of time. And so you can save tons of battery. There's tons of advantages for LoRaWAN and similar technologies, but you can't move a lot of data with LoRaWAN. Just to
Yeah, well, and again, beginning of the conversation, Marcus and I talked about setting the proper expectations, because oftentimes they're not in line with reality. And I think, I could point to probably two things from a marketing perspective in the last decade where it's a good example, or there are two good examples. One is becoming a gigabit community. What the hell does that mean? It's that, and I throw a slash after that and say smart city. If you ask 1,000 people what it means, what smart city means, you might get 700 different answers. It's really nebulous, and because it means different things to different communities, right? It really depends on what problems are they trying to solve. And then, of course, the latest one is 5G. I think the marketing efforts to date are not in line with reality, and even the fact that you can drive around if you have a 5G capable phone. You might see 5G in your phone, think, "Wow, I've got 5G." You don't have 5G. And the reason why it's a problem is because they're setting expectations again that they can't hope to meet anytime soon. I've heard some municipalities say that we're not interested in improving our infrastructure, our telecommunications infrastructure, because 5G is coming. It's going to solve our problems. Well, no, it's not. And by the way, more fiber is required to support 5G. So we have to build a lot more fiber in order to support that technology to begin with. But the carriers have done an amazing job of fooling people into thinking that they're using 5G, that they need a gigabit to their phone. Why does anyone need a gigabit to your phone when your phone runs one application at a time? So that's unnecessary. And then talking about covering the entire country in 5G is somewhat of a laughable challenge. If you think about home offsets in rural parts of the country, you have some homes that are 30 feet from the road, and you have some that are 300 yards down a hilly tree-covered driveway. How do you get capacity, if we're talking about 5G, from the road to that house? It's stuff like this that people don't know, they don't think about, they're not made aware of. Yet the industry itself does a pretty good job of setting the wrong expectations, and I think we've been very good at doing that for a very long time.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. I was in Northern Illinois this weekend with some friends, and they live down the road, half a mile from the road, between trees. And one of my friends pulled out her phone, and she says 5G. Then she tried to look at something. She said it was slow, like as if she was using, I don't know, whatever.
Squirrels.
Right. So she said, but it says 5G.
Right.
But as you say, it's expectation, because they think it's 5G now. It's going to be lightning speed, but it was far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example. And I would go further and say, and I've said this to some folks who don't want to hear it, but listen, it's 2021. I can still drive around the greater Denver area and experience all flavors of Verizon. I could be in an area where I have absolutely no connection, 1G, 3G, 4G, LTE, and again, if I believe the lie on my phone, 5G. Now, this was no different when we had 4G LTE. Same problem. As more devices come on network, the great bandwidth speed you have on your phone contracts over time, as well as the surface area. And so, quite simply, they can't keep up with demand. And 5G is going to require more capacity. It's also going to require more antennas. And in big cities like Denver or Dallas or Chicago, it's going to require a two-pronged approach to how you engineer it. And that is both horizontal and vertical because of buildings. So, I hope at some point it works. It works as they've laid it out, but I think we're a long ways away from that. My humble opinion. Everybody went to sleep.
No, I was actually going to ask you, Jeff. What for your conference that's coming up in a month? What is that conference going to entail, and what are some of the issues that you guys are going to address?
So I've got executives from all the major market segment industry associations coming to talk about the state of the industry. Obviously, federal funding and policy will be discussed, but really, the last half of that is going to be on what's the near-term future look like from their perspective, which that hasn't been done outside of Washington D.C. before. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've got a keynote on the impact of emerging technology applications, as we've been talking about, to how we design, build, and deliver broadband. We're going to be talking about two other important areas. One of them is an area an issue that'll clear itself up over time, and that's supply chain. So right now we have a chipset / fiber supply issue, but the second part of this discussion is going to be around the shortage of qualified fiber technicians, are just qualified people, industry people as a whole. And I think what people don't realize is that over the next decade, there's going to be a lot of subject matter expertise that's going to retire out of this industry. Who is going to, and we don't have a lot of people, younger people, interested in coming into the industry. We have a lot of open job recs, and some companies have gone so far as to try to attract people from other industries and retrain them. But if you think about all the diversity of projects that are going on today, along with the infrastructure funding that's coming out of the federal government, anywhere between $65 and $100 billion into this market, who is going to build these networks? So, because a lot of subsidy funding comes with finite windows associated to them. So you've got a certain amount of time once you're funded to actually build and turn up your network. So, but a decade from now, who's going to be managing our networks? Who's going to be providing cybersecurity, etc.? There's a real lack of interest in the industry for some reason, and we're going to be running low on qualified people. We've got some really interesting use case conversations going on too. There's actually I don't know if there's an example of this somewhere else, but we're going to talk about the impact of a full-fledged data center being constructed in a rural regional community, and how it's going to impact not only a rural region, but two Indian tribes as well, Native American tribes. So that I think that'll be an interesting conversation. I've got someone coming in to talk about circular economies as well. So for anyone not familiar with those type of initiatives, they really started out in Europe and some parts of Asia. And if you think about the way that we use products, we tend to be we're very disposable. We have a very disposable attitude towards products. We buy stuff and then we throw them away. Well, there's a multitude of different ways that you could reuse products. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about that because the circular economy initiatives have just started taking off in the U.S., I'd say, in the last year or so. But there are some really interesting use cases out of Europe, and a fair amount of them, the functional enabler at some point is telecommunications infrastructure. So, and then we're going to be talking about funding, because funding is such a big thing now with RDOF. If you're familiar with the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, so that's $20 billion, plus you've got USDA funds, and you've got economic development funds. You have rural utility services funding. So there's a lot of diverse funding projects, and I think it's very difficult for the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 communities to sort of unravel unravel which actually is the best use for their community, etc. So, anyways, there's a lot of interesting, what I'd like to think are interesting topics that are being explored. And I'm really trying to challenge people. I don't know of another broadband conference that has some focus on emerging technology applications, blockchain, IoT. Does anybody here know Rob Tiffany?
No, I do not.
He's worth looking up. He's considered one of the world's foremost experts in IoT technology. So Rob's coming to talk about digital twin. So he's gonna use an application for government use. So, anyways, trying to challenge my audience with content every year.
I have a question. You mentioned data centers. So are you guys going to address the environmental impact of data center, the amount of power and the amount of heat that they generate, and how we can minimize that?
If I wasn't running the event, I probably would take a look at that because I always like to play devil's advocate, but we're trying to keep it positive. Just kidding. No, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that's going to be discussed because obviously the people who are coming to talk about it are from the community, the regional community, the providers who are connecting into that data center, some of the long haul transport providers as well, and then the local economic development or regional economic development persons coming. So I doubt that'll get touched on. And because it's new, they'll probably want to keep that, keep it as positive as possible. Now, if they were doing Bitcoin mining there, I would reject the submission. I thought someone might understand that one, but
welcoming nostalgia back. Welcoming nostalgia back into the room, right? I would also love to hear from Rayful when we get a chance. But yeah, loved your funny there, Jeff.
Well, in general, I was really enjoying the conversation. But there's something I have to ask. You talk about the need for all of these skill sets to be uh, to be present to deliver these services. And my question is, how do we get in certain places get access to the needs list? How do we help in providing, getting people trained to be able to do this kind of work and then connect to make it happen? Because I'm in Houston, for instance, and there's nothing here that lets other places that are marginalized that could really take advantage of helping to fill that need, but we don't have access to it. And there's no organization here that's going to give us access to it because most of them are based upon neediness and not freedom. The freedom I'm looking for, which is the access to these kind of opportunities for a lot of people. There are people out there that can do these tests. We have a tremendous number of people that could do these kinds of tasks, but to deliver the message and to get the interest and to get the deliverables there is problematic.
Yeah. So one organization I would recommend you check out, if I'm understanding the problem you're trying to solve, and if I'm not, please tell me. But it's the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and I'd be surprised, quite frankly, if they didn't have someone from Houston participating. So that's a national organization, and typically when we talk about digital inclusion, digital equity and inclusion, the conversation up until pandemic hit was really about rural parts of the country. But I've always maintained that that's not going far enough because we have pockets in big cities like Houston where they're surrounded And in fact, in some places, they have great infrastructure going. They have fiber going through their neighborhoods, or they have fiber right on the periphery, but they're not connected because of demographic issues, right? So, which means that they're basically locked out. We've talked about locking out rural communities for a long time because it's so expensive to build, which is true. It is expensive to build in rural parts of the country, but I can tell you that we've spent hundreds of billions of dollars on telecom in the last 15 to 20 years, and you could make a compelling argument. This isn't just me. You can make a compelling argument. A lot of that money was wasted, and we could have everyone mostly connected, if not by fiber, then certainly by state of the art fixed wireless. Because I think that's a relevant technology until it's not relevant, and so it's going to be relevant for a long time. So, but please, check out the National Digital Inclusion Alliance.
Well, my position has been, when the people have the economics to engage those systems, then they will. But the problem is that they don't, and part of the reason is because they aren't even trained in awareness. They're not trained in being participants in the building, and so they don't even get the income from there. So you
Right.
got this circle of issues that's around that I want to be able to tap into, and if I can help bridge that in some way, then I would like to be a part of that.
So I know that, again, I don't know your region, but I know in Chicago, a lot of community college offer classes that are looking, for people to lay down fabric, to fiber, to low voltage technicians. There are tons of courses in the community college. So maybe the same is in your region. Maybe you should see what the community college offer. These are, you don't, the requirement to get in, you don't have to have, high level of degree, probably just finish high school and get into these classes. And even if you don't have high school, I'm sure that they, since it's more technical route, they may, you feel some prerequisite and can get into the industry. Because as Jeff said, the problem is that ultimately the people who lay down the fiber, the people who configure, the basic configuration of the routers and all of that's we won't have soon enough. So if that was your question, I would check the local community colleges.
But there are other industry associations that you could tap into. Fiber broadband associations, probably one. WISPA as another, where you can educate yourself if the community college is not a good route for you. At my conference, I have a scholarship program, so if someone has a particular need, I underwrite the cost of attending the conference for, I don't know, pence year over year. Sometimes, in previous years, sometimes the need's been greater, but I underwrite, a fair amount of conference registrations, and so people can come and get educated. Because I think that's the most important thing is education, right? If we're not, I wouldn't. I work a full-time job, and this is yet another full-time job for me. And I only tell you that because, if I didn't think that I was adding value for people, I'd stop doing it because it's a lot of work. But we need to do more of it.
I really agree with that. The problem is here's an issue. Every one of us, that they want us to go through these classes, these trainings, and then they want us to go to work for somebody else in another community that serves another community, that advances another community. And my point is, it's fine. We need to do that training, but we need to be able to attach to the projects, to the funding, so that we can create jobs and opportunities for these people. Because not only do we do that, but we help them where they are in other areas to help show the complete picture out. Not just here's a project and then there's no work, but we help give them jobs. We help give them opportunities to do this work, and then we can build other things along the way, build awareness. But the current model is for folks to go to school and then go to work for somebody else over there on the other side of town, and they'll pick you up for these projects. That is not a working model. That's why you have this need now in a community that is unaware. If
Yeah,
we understand and bring that into the community, where that not only is the opportunity, we are aware of it, but we can create opportunities that connect you to it in all facets, then we create a win-win deal.
yeah. And Rayful, I don't know if you were on this in here earlier, but I brought up the city of Detroit. There's a really beautiful video um, that is out there. In fact, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll share it with you. But I did post it about a week ago or so, where community advocates in the city of Detroit have built their own infrastructure. They they basically formed their own business around this. Um, got the right training and are uplifting their own community. It's a really great story. But I brought it up before as why should they they shouldn't have to do that.
Well,
Um, they shouldn't
but we
have to
have to
do it,
do
but
that.
nonetheless they are doing it because they're not being served or they're
Yeah,
being underserved, right?
right.
So that's the problem they solved, and they took it
Hmm.
upon themselves to do it. It's a really amazing story.
So, Jeffrey, how do I connect with you outside of Clubhouse?
Connect with me on LinkedIn.
I didn't see your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, I'm definitely there. There aren't too many people with my last name running around.
Okay, all right, I'll do it that way. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
or are you connected with Brittany?
Nope,
Okay, yeah, because
but
Yeah.
I'll connect with her. I'll go whatever route I need to go
yeah,
to try to make something happen there.
yeah, happy to help you if I can.
Okay, all right, sir.
You're welcome.
I think one of the things I'm hearing from this is how to fundraise, design, and also build infrastructure should be a recurring type of topic that we have in some of these multiple rooms. Because where to go get the funding, how to actually think about designing it, and then how to actually go out and find people or invite other people who are builders into the process. Um,
I would say, yeah, that
that's the
agreed, but I think there's the the consistent conversation around education and change management or stakeholder management. And finding those groups that are already doing those things so we can leverage their resources, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel as far as people who are actually doing these things in respective communities where there are challenges in communicating about the needs and as they are. So I would say yes, and to what you said, Marcus.
I just want to welcome Nick to the stage. Nick, um, I know you do some work in disaster areas. I don't know if we want to talk about that based off of what we talked about right now. But Nick, feel free to.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I spent not right now. I work on some multifamily residential development stuff as it kind of crosses over with tokenization of real estate in the crypto world. But the last 5 years in the disaster response world, so I traveled all over the country and the world, and there's definitely a need for a change just in the way that we build things as disasters keep getting worse. And the money that we spend not only building the way we've been building for 100 years, but um, just redoing the same thing over and over again, as well as probably making it much worse in that when you rebuild after a disaster, most often for insurance purposes or other financial reasons, um, it probably is not the same quality of, not the same kind of air quality or living conditions that you would want post-disaster, even after you rebuild. Just due to the nature of mold and mildew and and things that go along with that. So definitely interested in trying to apply some of those things to what I'm doing now, which is really what I am trying to do. So, but I just jumped in. I didn't know what you guys were talking about up to this point. So, but I was.
So, what we were talking about earlier was internet connectivity and the growing and increasing demands. So, how to work on future proofing those demands. And then also, we were worried about being able to be more inclusive. Most of the conversation's been around inclusivity, but some of the conversation has also been around preparing for what we could do to help further. Like one example is increasing the requirements for what's considered broadband. Jeffrey was talking about instead of 25 up, means 25 down, changing it to like 100 down. And then we were talking about being able to track into rural areas. And the last conversation that we just got off of was um, being able to um, take the information that we do know about infrastructure now and how to find good talent and develop talent. And Rifle just mentioned being able to do it within our communities that we are currently in instead of doing it for some other community after we learn the information.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if you guys talked about it or not, but you're mentioning broadband, and which requires physical infrastructure. But I know Starlink is kind of in beta testing right now. I think I don't know if they're finished with their beta testing or not, but that continues to develop, and I think other companies very shortly will get into the space of providing internet services throughout the world without requiring the physical installation and continual upkeep of that physical portion of it. About 3 years or 4 years ago, I don't know what the price is now, but really what has allowed Starlink to even be possible is that the cost of launching a satellite into orbit broke the $100,000 barrier. It's probably gone down considerably since then. So as that price continues to drop, I think there will be more players, not just from the United States, but from some other emerging market economies that have very large telecommunications players, like India, for instance, who will very easily be able to, or at least financially so, will be able to get into that space as well. And when you're talking about satellites, there's not really a geographical barrier to any of that. So I would think that would be the next space really that is going to be competitive for, and the best maybe use of global capital to provide internet services to people that don't have it yet, assuming that you would have to require that would require so much physical infrastructure build.
So before I comment on that, I'll say that there is a place for satellite. However, there are two fundamental problems with it. One, we already have too many lights in the air. I was reading some program that I believe any country that has a satellite orbiting the Earth is keyed into, and they have to make satellite corrections. They have to make satellite corrections like once every 8 days, and now it's 8 times a day. They have to make satellite something like that. You can look that up, but it's profoundly changed. The issue with satellite is that if you think about it, you're taking infrastructure from the ground, you're beaming it up to a satellite, then you're doing a point to multi-point solution from there. Satellites still impacted by weather, still impacted by latency, still impacted by other things that interfere with its ability to provide a transferable broadband experience that you would get from fixed technology, whether it's wireline or wireless. It's not a place. I hope I don't regret saying that, but it's not ever going to replace those other fixed technologies. Not ever, because it's still a conundrum. And quite frankly, the federal government just gave Elon Musk $1 billion for a startup technology. I'm not suggesting Elon Musk can't make this work, but it has not been proven at scale. Yet they gave him $1 billion. Rayful could have used that money in his local community to build out infrastructure to support his community. You know, that's where this whole thing has gone wrong, I think.
And I agree with Jeff about the allocation of resources. Now to Nick's, so it's, the satellite is still in beta. At the moment, the problem is the entry point is pretty high. It costs you $500 to buy the hardware from Elon Musk or from Starlink. Then they charge you $100 about a month for the data service. I think that for a lot of people, especially in the rural area, it's quite steep. So either they're going to rely on government subsidies, or again won't be able to join the party. So I think that the government may have other ideas why they gave Elon Musk $1 billion. Maybe because they think that he can solve some other uses that outside our use for military or whatever it is. But yeah, I think that giving Elon Musk that have so much money anyway, $1 billion subsidy is wrong way of using.
Well, and the other challenge is, let's not forget that satellites move around the Earth, so they're not always in the same place. So another reason to sort of to throw at the point about not being able to replicate a wireless or wireline broadband experience here on Earth. And let's not also forget that they have not solved the data cap issue either. So it's like having service from a cable company today. You might pay $70 a month for a gigabit by 50 connection, but as soon as you go over 2 terabytes a month, I had Comcast before I had fiber. I was paying $140 a month because we do everything over the top. So consuming a lot of data, satellite's not a solution for that either. And we're entering into a world where emerging technology applications are going to consume a boatload of data. And so I do you then reduce people's ability to adopt and use technology? I think so.
Just to add my another point is that I think that the answer is actually a lot of technology at the same time. So, for example, if the cellular network can probably provide a lot of data by building towers with a lot less than $1 billion in the rural areas. But I think that you need all of the above. The question is, if since resources are limited, where do you put your money in? I think that we mentioned it in previous conversation, is the fact that in Ohio, the Republicans trying to block some cities the ability to build their own network when they were underserved by the major companies, but the major companies trying to lobby against it because they felt that they can make a buck by not improving, as Jeff said, by keeping the data rates low. Luckily, there was enough public pressure and they backed off. But having cities building their own networks, as Jeff said in Detroit, often can be challenging from legislative and from financial way of getting.
Hey, hey. Hey, hey. So I think this has been some really interesting discussion. I don't think that we've gotten into the healthy side of things on the smart and healthy buildings. We've been particularly talking about what it takes to support smart and healthy buildings to start with, and we haven't even dug into the IoT side of things. But I think it's some really great foundational discussion um, that we've been talking about, guys. And I just appreciate all of you and your perspectives. I do want to, I guess, start wrapping up the room. Um, always love to hear from the individuals who are on the stage and or in the audience and those on our live stream. How did the conversation
Our
go?
live
Is there anything that you'd want to improve, or is there anything you want to hear more about? Also, anything that you really liked. So, I guess we can start going around the stage. Marcus, do you want to start?
I think finding people that have some of these people who are in charge of funding some of these initiatives. I think it's some or in charge of helping people to find some of this funding for some of these infrastructure initiatives would be a good place to start. That's where I'm looking at as far as things that I can bring to the table.
All right, thanks, Marcus. Jeff?
No, I just really appreciate everyone's input. We probably need more of this kind of dialogue in order to move the needle forward.
Agreed, and we thank you, Jeff, for your input. You always bring some riveting perspective to the to the conversation, and I like how you always kind of play the devil's advocate as well and dig in. So appreciate your contribution today, Alan.
So actually, I I appreciate Jeff reminding us all how money is not used in the right places, and often, we're wasting money because of politics or interest, and rather than helping building communities and giving the resources to people that actually really, really need it and don't have access to it. So thank you.
Well, I just really appreciate getting everyone's insights and being able to voice it, being able to sit here and listen to it and understand it from all different levels. I also kind of really love the philanthropic approach where, there's other priorities. Yes, money is one of those things that we need to solve, but there's other priorities there in helping people systematically and trying to cover some bigger topics that need a starting place. And I love this as a starting place.
Thanks for that, Chris. Rayful, how about you?
Hey, thank you very much. Brittany, I did send you a post. I think it was on Instagram or something, but I'm going to try to reach out to Jeffrey. But there were a lot of things here that I liked. There are a lot of people right now who don't see opportunity, don't see access, and will insufficiently participate in all of these things that y'all are talking about. My point in saying that is it's an opportunity when there's a need, and there's an indication that there's a need now and a need in the future for the country to be able to provide people that know how to work on, that install fiber and do all these other things, great things that need to be done. why not make an opportunity for these folks to be empowered by being included? But the inclusion, if you look at the way we've included people in history, it has not been adequately enough to serve certain communities. I want to try to help fulfill that role. And so I'm going to be reaching out, but we got to understand, we got to find a way for these people to be included, because if they're not included, they may be the next one to nail you upside the head. And that's how we can prevent that, is by giving people access to opportunity, to access to part of this system and make things better. So I'm reaching out in a way to help everybody, including the need, including the people, and see if we can't make this a better place. Thank you.
Hey, Rayful, I sent you a message on LinkedIn, by the way.
Okay, sir. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's
We appreciate your perspective, Rayful, and that's part of the reason why we have these conversations here on Clubhouse in the first place. We are looking for ways to make meaningful impact and figure out what those starting points are, figure out what those gaps are that we can start here on Clubhouse, but reach back into the communities that actually need it. Um, we did ask Marcus asked Jeff a little bit earlier about his conference, which I think is talking to kind of industry level folks. But in general, I think connecting up with Jeff, for anybody who's listening, he definitely has a good inclusivity lens when it comes to broadband and accessibility to internet for the masses. So really, really just encourage you to, if you're interested, reach out to him. Nick, we always appreciate you in our rooms. Share your thoughts on how our conversation went. Any thoughts there?
No, it was a great conversation. Thanks again for having me. I only caught the tail end of it there, but you kind of mentioned that you didn't get a chance to hit on the healthy buildings portion of it. So that would be one thing that I would like to hear more about for another talk. We're talking about indoor air quality and kind of the way we build and healthier living and working environments.
Yeah, wonderful. Alan, Ryan, if you have comments, what could we improve? What did you like? What might you want to hear more about? We'd love to hear from you. Also, anybody in the chat, please share. We are on LinkedIn, Periscope. Periscope is Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you are on any of those platforms, please put a note in the chat. Let us know what you enjoyed and what you'd like to hear more about. Alan, Ryan, if you'd like to raise your hand and share, we'll take it. All right, I don't see you guys raising your hands. So with that, I appreciate all of you. And if you're interested in our lean construction roundtable discussions, we will be meeting in the Prop Tech Club tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Central. So join us there. We always
6
have
a.m.
6 a.m. Central. 6 a.m.? Oh, yeah, I guess 6 a.m. Central.
We have a new moderator.
Oh yeah, thanks for the reminder. This is our Rise and Grind Lean Construction Prop Tech Clubhouse call. Great conversation if you are overseas. It's great timing. So that being said, guys, join us there tomorrow. But if you're interested in the smart city community and continuing conversations about how to provide general access to the things that are really just simply important to the citizen, we meet Wednesdays every week at 5 p.m. Central. We do have a live stream coming up, and we will be talking about tokenization and real estate on Friday. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn or any of the platforms, please just ping me and I'll definitely give you a link to that. But yeah, appreciate all of you. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, everybody.
No problem.
Have a great evening, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.